Good afternoon, everyone. As Anna said, we have some very special folks here, and they're over here, not here. This setup is a little strange for me. I feel like, Johnny Carson or for some, Jack Parr, if you want to go back. Or better, Stephen Colbert would work. But enough of that, but we'll make it work in any event. But we have Robin and Jon, who, as you will hear, have extraordinary backgrounds and are doing some extraordinary work in the Hopewell community. We'll call it the greater Princeton community, Mercer County, and all around. So we're going to get started. The format that we'll follow, we'll spend about a half hour, 40 minutes talking to each other, and then we want to open it for discussion or questions that you may have. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to stop talking and ask Robin and Jon to tell us a little bit about your respective backgrounds and what prompted you to go into farming. Because as you will hear with their backgrounds, farming did not seem to be in the picture, but it's changed a bit. So Robin and Jon, you're on.
Want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we were living in New York in the early aughts, and we had just purchased a house in Maine, and we were moving in, and I was about to go get something at Subway, some sandwiches, but I had read an article in the back of the New York Times. It was an excerpt from Michael Pollan's Power Steer, and he basically had purchased a cow and just tracked its life cycle, and I was so disgusted. I'm like, oh, this is so gross, Jon, you have to read this, because we love eating meat. And then I went on, I'm like, what do you want from Subway? And he said a meatball sub, and I didn't even think twice. And I get back and he's like, are you trying to kill me with this meatball, like conventional meat sub? Because it just made conventional, like that, it just was peeling back the curtain on how conventional meat is made. And that was kind of the beginning point from where we decided we wanted to own some land and a small amount of animals, chickens, and some sheep and maybe a cow, just to show our kids where food comes from. But that was the very beginning. But Jon was working in New York, and we had an infant at that time, so I was home with him, kind of in between working as a headhunter and working in sports entertainment. But we bought, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we bought the piece of land in Hopewell in 2003, incorporated our farm in 2004, and slowly built our property out. And then in about 2008, 2009, we really started collecting animals, because we went to bring our first animal to market or to slaughter, and I had sent an email out to about 25 friends saying who wants a quarter share, because that's the way it works when you bring it and they cut and wrap it, and almost everybody responded, I want that. So we grew it, and then of course it mushroomed out of control into what it became, and Jon eventually left New York, left Credit Suisse in 2011, and we really focused then on becoming farmers and figuring out how we could create a closed loop system to raise the meat, sell the meat, prepare it in its best form in the restaurant, and then any waste return it back to the land. But that's the origin story, but I'm gonna send it to you.
I can't add too much to that. That was a pretty detailed explanation. Although we both went to Princeton Day School. So why are we farmers in New Jersey? The answer is we came back because our parents lived here and we had kids. And so that's what brought us back to New Jersey. But I was in finance for 20 years, 10 years in Philadelphia, 10 years in New York. And why make the shift? It's a good question, but I enjoyed my finance career, but at the end of the day, there wasn't anything tangible, so it's nice to have something that you can touch and feel at the end of the day, where finance, you can measure your success by dollars and cents, but not necessarily get fulfillment out of tangibility.
So you are raising cattle or cows and animals, and they're being slaughtered, and then you're selling off. By the way, people say they want a quarter, but if you have a lot of people, they're not all getting the quarter, which I guess is good news. One of the things that I know about your farm is that you are USDA approved, which is unusual. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and what that means in terms of the work that you do and how you're able to go to market?
So as we started thinking about raising animals, it was important to us, after reading Power Steer, it really got us on a pathway to understand the commercial farming, the industrial farming, and the horrors that go along with that. So it was important to us that the animals had a good life and they had a good harvest, so that they were respected from the time that they were born to the time they made it to the plate. And so most people don't know it, but everything that you eat, that you buy in the grocery store that was living, has to be inspected by the USDA. And so there's a lot of, 80% of the beef that you eat goes through 3 slaughterhouses. So it's unique to have control of the harvest. And so we are one of 3 USDA inspected slaughterhouses on farm. So any other
In the country.
in the country. So any other meat that you're buying goes out to the slaughterhouse and comes back. So even if you're going to a farmer's market, they've lost control of the animal at maybe the time that makes the most, that's the most important. And so what's unique about ours, the only place in the country that the animals walk to the slaughterhouse. So they're born on the farm, they're raised on the farm, they see the slaughterhouse their entire time, and it's farmers that are part of the butchering. So they're with people that they know, they're with animals that they know, and it greatly reduces the stress. For us, that was important because of the welfare of the animal, but it also makes a difference to flavor. That if you put an animal under stress, it changes the texture, the flavor, and so the big slaughterhouses focus on trying to reduce that stress because the economics of having a better product. For us, it's about the welfare of the animals.
Well, you raised the issue a moment ago about caring for the animals, and I don't think people think about that in terms of the end product. So let's talk about that a little bit. What does that mean? You've mentioned the stress on the animals in terms of what happens to them, but talk about the concept of caring for an animal and what that means in terms of the lifespan of the animal.
Well, just to start, I mean, we and to sort of parlay off the back of the slaughterhouse discussion, it's like it seems counter to be talking about a slaughterhouse and also to be talking about having humane animal treatment be one of the most important things that we do. But we designed our whole farm around keeping animals in environments that are natural to them. So they're grazing on grass. They live in their, I don't want to say family unit, but they're nursing from their mother, their sow or whatever until an appropriate time that they can be weaned. And we farm in a way that makes us feel good about the life that these animals are living. But the slaughterhouse itself also, we used the design of Temple Grandin. Even in our very micro slaughterhouse, we have a curved entrance. We have it blocked off so there's not any ambient light. And then we also, because we do so few animals compared to these larger slaughterhouses, we can, if an animal gets startled or they don't want to go in the chute, we just back them up. And usually they're sleeping, in the little paddock where they stay. So it's a lot of description about the slaughterhouse, but it's such a huge part of what we do in terms of humane animal treatment. I don't know if I just answered your question, but
You're doing great. So.
Well, in the U.S., the amount of money that we spend on food is pretty far down the list. Most of us spend more on our cell phones than we do on the food that we eat. And so the agricultural industry has grown up around that. So one person can take care of 1 million chickens if that's what you're trying to do, is make cheap chicken. And so to balance that, it's very labor intensive to care for the animals, but it's important that there's a sense of purpose, a sense of peace to know the animal from the time it's born until the time it's harvested.
You're raising an issue in terms of how you operate your farm, yet out in the rest of the country, and if not the world, there's a different model, the agribusiness model. So why don't you help us understand what that's like as compared to what you're doing?
So confinement is the majority of the meat that's produced. 99% of the meat produced in the U.S. is confinement, meaning that the animals are kept inside and for economic reasons. So if you have, literally one person can take care of 1 million chickens if you put them in tight enough. That works. Same with pigs, that one person can take care of 100,000 pigs. If you put them in a space in confinement where they never see the light of day, they're taken from their mother early on and never actually touch dirt. They spend their whole lives on a concrete floor. And that's true for just about every meat product that we eat. So cattle are raised the same way, pigs, chickens, egg layers, milk.
And even free-range chicken is raised and can be raised in a warehouse, hundreds of thousands of them. And for those chickens to be free-range, they just need access to the outdoors and a tiny paddock. And from raising chickens, we know if something is unfamiliar to them, they won't explore it. So probably not a single chicken ever actually goes outside, but they can be labeled free range. So there's a lot of slick marketing going on.
Yeah, and part of that is the lobbying that happens in Washington, that the big agribusiness wants to have better marketing. And so free range is an example that not only do they not recognize that they could go outside, if they were all to go outside, there wouldn't be time. They wouldn't have enough time for every chicken to go outside and come back in before they met their maker. So it's become a marketing hook. As long as it's a widget, it's not a problem. As long as we don't consider the welfare of the animal, that it's a thinking being with a nervous system, then it works great.
At some point after you purchased the farm and started operating, you actually changed your business model a little bit, and you went into other ventures in the Hopewell area. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, they kind of all were attached in the beginning, so that we were looking for a space to do a creamery where we were going to do ice cream and bottled milk, and there weren't that many big spaces in Hopewell. So we looked at the old Sunoco station, and we looked at the old Hopewell Theater, and neither made sense, but we got far enough down the line of looking at them as being part of what we were doing from the agricultural side that they wound up as part of our portfolio. But what we were doing from the agricultural side was also important for the purpose of community. So that we had a market and a restaurant, and it really was about having a closed loop system that was part of the community. And so those things, even though they didn't turn out to be part of the agricultural businesses that we were working on, they turned out to be important to us for adding to the community.
What I was going to say is a lot of our discussions around the kitchen table as we were starting, as we were planning for John to leave Credit Suisse and to really dive in head first, is that because we didn't come to farming from a farming background or family or whatever, we visited a lot of farms. We talked to a ton of farmers. We went to ag forums, and a problem that everyone had kept coming to the foreground. Farmers don't have time to market. Restaurants don't have time to go to individual farms for the most part and get the best products. And so we decided, and markets as well. And so we decided we were going to just close that loop for ourselves, create a market, create a restaurant, and have as much as we possibly could come from our farm. So in the beginning, we actually had produce as well. It was a huge, unwieldy beast of a project, and it needed to be pared down. But that's kind of where it started, and then we were making our own cheese, we were making our own ice cream, and drying herbs and doing all kinds of stuff. And at one point we had about 100 employees in just in Hopewell. So it was a lot. And then we had Red Barn catering. It just it kind of, as I said, it mushroomed out of control. But I think we've now come to a sweet spot. But that's sort of how it started to get bigger, is to satisfy all of these loose ends for marketing and our pull-through for our product.
I suspect that a number of folks in the audience have frequented both the market and the restaurant. Why don't you tell us where it was and was operating?
Well, first of all, we love the Malik Chevrolet building. Does anyone here know it when it was Malik Chevrolet? I mean, even just delivering the papers to Dan Malik, it always had a great feel to it. It still does. And so we bought that building, and we were friends with Luke and Deanne Lemmerling, who owned what is now the Brick Farm Tavern. And I just remember driving by saying, that would be an amazing place for a restaurant. I mean, it just would be so perfect. So in a crazy way, we bought both of those properties in 2010, and we started renovating the Malik Chevrolet building to become the market first, which opened in 2013. And then 2015, we opened the tavern. But that's kind of how it came about. We were just driving through town being like, that looks like a great spot for a market. We could do that there. Naming it, it's...
Do you still sell your product there?
We still sell our product at the market.
Yeah, in 2022, we had a partner in the market, in the restaurant, that we brought on in 2018 or 19. He passed away, and so we sold the market and the restaurant in 22. And so it's gone through some different iterations, especially the market, but there still is a corner that sells our stuff, and we still supply them with
tavern too.
We still supply the tavern with their proteins.
Now, what you're doing in terms of, caring about the animals that you're raising and ultimately will be sold out. How do you feel in terms of how it affects you personally in terms of what I'll call a peaceful existence with the land, with the earth, and with these various creatures who, at some level, become part of your family in the broadest sense?
Yes. Yeah, I think everybody that has a pet recognizes that there's a certain peacefulness or peacefulness in having animals around. So that day to day, just being around the animals for me is good for the soul. Even though
I'll just say, every once in a while I get a video, or John will call and be like, I'm out here with the turkeys. You should hear how they're just making all these crazy noises, like they just started, because the turkeys go out on pasture. They're big enough to go out on pasture in about a month from now. And he just loves to sit out there and just hang and listen to them. And they come up and flock all around. But I know that brings you peace.
Yeah, and we've done a good job in this country of detaching ourselves from where our food comes from, and so we don't have to take the emotional burden of when the final end comes. But so there is that stress that goes along with it. But the day-to-day being around the animals when they're born or when when they're being raised, it's peaceful.
It's the best job in the world for an introvert. No one's talking to you. They come
They don't
around.
talk back.
There's no talking back. They are playful and funny. I mean, the pigs are outrageous. And when the piglets are, it's fun. And also, I was talking about this the other day. The thought that we are creating food in this world where everything seems so fast and transactional, creating food is something that even on the large, huge, big agribusiness scale, it has to take time. It has to take the time that it takes, and there's something really amazing in being a part of that river that's flowing. We have to plan for next year. We're already planning for next year. It also makes life very hard. We can't just switch directions tomorrow and say we don't want to do this. We have thousands of animals on the ground right now, but there is something really nice about living in the seasons and living in the season of an animal's life.
The other nice thing about being a farmer is that every day there's a problem to be solved, and you have to know a little bit about everything.
That's nice.
That the weather's going to change, or every day that I wake up, the plan changes a bit, because it's you never know what the weather's going to throw at you, or what the animals are going to do, and whether a piece of equipment's going to break, or some plumbing needs to be done. And so that makes for an interesting day. It's not just about getting up and doing the same thing every day.
But you do it with satisfaction at the end. The equipment gets fixed.
Yeah.
And the weather changes, and it all works at some level. One thing that has to be mentioned is, you're running this business, and it's a business, albeit with a human component that, frankly, I think is unique. But you're also involved with the community, and you have this meat and the chickens and so forth. Tell us a little bit about your community involvement, and don't be humble and don't be shy. About the work that you do with various other organizations in the Hopewell community and the greater area.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about farming in New Jersey is you're within an hour's drive of 10 million people, and our product is more expensive than what you can get in the grocery store. And so it, sometimes we think about maybe it's not so great that we're just making food for the wealthy. And there's been a couple programs that have started in New Jersey that are trying to get the farms connected with the people in need. And so we've been working with Homefront to get, it's a 8-mile drive from the farm to Homefront. And so we've been working with them, and in a perfect world, we would shift the majority of what we raise over to them, so that it would be good for the soul that if our food was going to the people that really need it. And so we've been probably 30%, 40% of what we produce now is going to Homefront. but it's not being donated. There's programs where they're paying for it, and that part is important to us to get the economics working so that we can transition the farm to the employees that we have now. So our end goal would be the employees that are currently on the farm take it over, and we can connect what's being grown with the people that need it.
I was going to also say, in the beginning, the pandemic really opened our eyes in terms of working with the community. Right before the pandemic struck, John and some other people we were affiliated with had started a foundation called the Decency Foundation, and it was supposed to be a place where people could donate seed money to pilot projects and farmers, small farmers, to get them up and running to kind of either do the same type of thing that we were doing, or dairy farming or whatever. And very quickly, we had established a board, and we were making some headway in getting donations and finding projects to put them towards. Very quickly, when the pandemic struck, we realized there were a lot of gray workers, people who don't qualify for government payouts of any kind. They're getting paid maybe under the table. That they were falling through the cracks. So we worked with Rolling Harvest, we worked with Homefront, we worked with Chubby's through donations from the Decency Foundation. So we too could also get paid, because farmers, as you probably are aware in this country, have probably the smallest margins of almost any business out there. So we transitioned that during that time. So if you came to the tavern at that time and ate under the tent, at the bottom of your check was an option for you to donate to the Decency Foundation. So that was where we kind of dabbled in working with the community in terms of like dispersing, getting food out there to communities in need. And we became very familiar with Homefront through that, with Rolling Harvest, and as I said, with Chubby's, and the food bank in Princeton that I think is associated with Trinity Church. And that felt good in a time when a lot of things really did not feel good. But that was the beginning. And now the Decency Foundation actually has gone on, has retransitioned to what its original purpose was. And we have our first pilot project, which is Hun Val Dairy Farm, now has their own bottler, glass bottle, they have their milk in glass bottles, their own bottler on farm, so they don't have to ship their milk. They get to keep all of the proceeds, and they can sell the milk at a great price, and it's in glass bottles, and it's the only Jersey Fresh milk made in New Jersey from a single source. So the Decency Foundation now is doing what it's supposed to be doing, but I had to mention that because their milk is so good, and the project worked. But sorry, I just went off. What?
No, you're doing great. And people don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you.
As I was saying, like being able to pay the farmer for their product is also very important. When I've done a lot of work with the DNR Greenway on events, and every time I would go to Pam Mount and say, can I have a million pieces of asparagus, she would say, no, you cannot. Why doesn't someone donate the money to purchase the asparagus? And that really opened my eyes. I mean, this is their living, and everyone in Princeton is asking them to donate. And when what we should really be doing is asking our patrons to donate to be able to buy these products from our farmers. I mean, that's the most important thing, is just buying from your local farmer.
I mean, the perspective that you're describing is very important, because people don't think of it that way. How many pieces of asparagus did you have or were available? I mean, it's, there's a scope there that is probably not fully appreciated, and yet there's a way to deal with that, and that's getting the public involved. So I have one last question, and then we're going to open up for some questions from the audience. So you're working this farm, it's 24/7. There's you know, John, you pointed out there's always something out there. At the end of the day, you've communed with these animals, you fix the machinery, everyone is fed. I assume they sleep at night. Your family does, and hopefully the animals as well. Describe the feeling of that. You know, part of this program is peace. And describe the inner peace that comes to you from knowing that you put in that long day, you did good work, you're doing great work in the community. What does it mean at the end of the day for you personally?
Well, so I don't know if on a daily basis whether we all reflect upon that. That there's another day tomorrow, but as Robin talked about, like for me, just being out, sometimes I'll just stop and look. I'm amazed. I'll give you an example of what's happening now. So our turkeys are hatching now. So the turkeys that we sell for Thanksgiving, we hatch ourselves, and we hatch about 2,500. And I'm amazed every time I look at an egg, and this little thing figured out how to get out of this enclosure. And it's moments like those throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, where it's you pause and say that this is really peaceful.
Yeah. Robin, any thoughts?
Well, okay, so we, the friction in the farm life comes when you want to have a vacation or go out to dinner with friends or play tennis, because it really is 7 days a week. And, when we get into it, like we need to find more balance, we need this, we need that. I always come back to the fact that I'm so proud of what we've built and how we have been able to provide food for our community. I mean, it's really, really difficult work. It's really complicated work. Everything has to be working together to make it happen. And we've developed some efficiencies of scale, but it is hard work. And I just come back to the fact that we get to live on a beautiful piece of property surrounded by animals. We have some rogue pets, which you're not supposed to have when you're a farmer, that have names. But it's a wonderful lifestyle when when stuff isn't broken and all of that. But it really is something incredible that we built. That makes me feel great.
Well, you use the word pride. To just use another form of the word, you should be very proud of what you're doing. And I think all of us, understanding what you're doing, are very thankful that there are folks like you who are willing to do it. And it takes certain fortitude and commitment, and you're extraordinary, both of you. And with that, let's hear some questions.
Thank you. It was wonderful, really fine, inspiring. You spoke at the onset of Michael Pollan, and I'm wondering at what point you encountered the 1976 Peter Singer Animal Liberation, and how that fit with your thinking, planning, values, and your just general overall look at things, particularly since he's local. Or was.
Have you been to Peter Singer? I obviously know who Peter Singer is, but his thinking, his ideas have not factored in a way, I mean, other than having a discussion about it. And I apologize, I've had this discussion before, but I only, like, with friends who have hosted him at their house, and they've said, what do you think about Peter Singer and his ideas about raising animals and being vegan or being not vegan and making those choices? We think about that a lot, and believe me, especially when we first started, we had many people sending us emails, you're evil, you're slaughtering animals, and John's response was, I would be a vegan tomorrow if everybody stopped eating meat. No problem, but people are going to eat meat, and we're going to raise animals in a way that we feel comfortable having, you know, like we just that we feel comfortable with. I hope I answered your question.
He's a vastly more complicated person, at least he became much more complicated than 1976. Thank you. Yeah, hi.
Very interesting. What animals do you actually raise on your farm that you bring to slaughter?
So currently, we had beef at one point, and that was the romance of beef. After reading that article and talking to farmers was kind of what it got us into farming. And at one point, we had almost 500 head of cattle, and they were on and off trailers, moving them around, and so maybe the best day of our farming life was the day we decided to get rid of the cattle. But, so we have chickens, turkeys, pigs, sheep. And we have a friend in Pennsylvania that raises the cattle for us. So we sell beef too, and we don't slaughter the beef, but we butcher it and process it after it's been slaughtered.
And I would just add to that, the reason the beef were so hard for us to raise here is we do what's called mob grazing. We do rotational grazing. We have to move the animals at least once a day. In the summer, sometimes 2-3 times a day, depending on how dry the grass is. And in the winter, you know, then we spend also a good portion of the summer producing hay, making hay so that they have grass to eat in the winter. And they move in the winter as well. So anytime anything was broken, anytime someone got hurt, anytime an animal got hurt, it was because we were moving the cattle, because you have to move them constantly. And so.
Well, and their life cycle is so
perspective on
long,
that.
so that you harvest it, grass-fed, harvest at 3 years. So you have the mamas, you have the babies, you have the 1-year-olds, you have the 2-year-olds, you have the 3-year-olds. They all have to be in separate groups. So on the average day, we were driving 100 miles just to make sure that we were taking care of all the cattle.
I'm curious, what dinner conversation did you have when you made this decision?
I don't remember the actual conversation. And I'm not sure.
Well, do you know that allegory of the frog boiling?
Yeah, it was
That's kind of
very small decisions that.
or death by a million cuts. It just grew. It was like, oh, so many people want a quarter of this animal. Let's get 10 more head of cattle. And then we're gonna have head of cattle, and we were following who's the guy with the rotational grazing with the chickens coming after the
Joel Salatin.
Joel Salatin's.
Which is an omnivore's dilemma. Yep.
Yes, we were trying to set it up so that the cows would go first, and they like to eat the longer grass. Then the sheep would come in. They liked shorter grass. Then the chickens would come in and just go through the manure and spread the seeds out. And then the pigs would come through and just root through everything and turn the soil. And yeah, that was a crazy idea.
And the vegetables
So we
were
tried
part of
it.
the operation too. So at one point we had the vegetables, we had the animals, we had cheese making, we had ice cream making, we had the market, we had the restaurant, we had the slaughterhouse, we had
Red Barn, the burger
Red
place.
Barn, we had the burger place.
So you
And
were
120
operating under 28-hour days, not 24-hour days.
Well, and the best, we had 120 employees, and if that took 95% of the time was the employees.
But an interesting fact, I will say, we had all of those businesses plus on-site and off-site catering. And when John mentioned that that the person who was really managing our retail side died, he died in his sleep. It was very, very sudden. It was in 22, and we had all of these businesses up and running, going full bore, and that was some dinner conversation. That was it was very sad, and it was also very, very scary because it was just the two of us, not knowing where the bodies are buried in any of these operations that he was running. Which, I mean, we got a hold of it, but we ended up selling the market and the tavern right after that. It just made the decision a lot easier.
But
Yeah,
if
so
any-
there wasn't one dinner that we were like, let's do all this at once.
But if any of you want to have a conversation with your spouse or partner or whatever, about getting into the business, I'm sure John and Robin will be happy to talk to you. Other questions?
Well, I have another question.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before Florence, you ask your question, if anyone in the audience wants to purchase some of your product, where do they go?
So we're at the Princeton Farmers Market now, and we're at the Lambertville Farmers Market, and you can come to the farm. So we don't have a farm store. By the end of the year, maybe we'll have a farm store. But if you call us or you go on our website, we'll sell it off the farm.
I'm curious about the marketing claims that you see when you go into stores today. It's like BST free, hormone free. By the time you get done reading it, you're not really sure about what's valid and what isn't. Do you do any marketing claims? And how is a person really to know what's truly believable on a package?
Yeah, so you bring up a very important question and a very important point. So I think that we're at the point in history where what you think you're eating and what you're actually eating, there's never been a wider spread. There's not a whole lot of truth in advertising, even though the USDA claims that there is. Free range is an example. Free range comes down to a definition of they need access to the outside. No, sorry, that's pasture raised. Free range means that they just are not in a cage. So we don't do a lot of marketing. And in fact, organic is one of the labeling things that truly does mean something, that there's a set of rules and you can read what the set of rules are. But it is for marketing, so that if you're buying something in the grocery store and you've never heard about the farm where it's coming from or the place that it's coming from, that you know that there's some set of rules that have been followed. And because the majority of our customers can talk to us face to face, we've never found it important to get certified organic. So our practices are, our practices are such that we could get certified.
Organic practice.
Yeah.
So we are just to sort of like clear, we feed our hogs and poultry. We supplement their forage diet with a non-GMO, locally grown grain that we grind ourselves on demand when necessary. And our sheep are 100% grass-fed. The beef we sell that we get from the other farm is from an operation that's been doing grass-fed for almost 30 years. And we do use an antibiotic, but if necessary, but it's only if necessary. And because our animals are super healthy, they're outside on pasture, that it's so rare that we have an issue.
And we'll take them, and for the most part, we've come up with ways that we don't need antibiotics. And if we do use an antibiotic, it doesn't go into the food chain.
But what we found too is that organic doesn't mean humane. I mean, foregoing an antibiotic, who of us would forego an antibiotic if we had something that was going to kill us, so we don't do that. But those animals don't go into our retail stream. We'll sell it.
Yeah, and as animal farmers, I don't want to get too gruesome, but organic really is not very humane. That organic is for what goes into our bodies, not necessarily what that means for the welfare of the animals. And so, the mortality rates on organic chicken farm or so it can be confinement and still be organic. And the mortality rate is significantly higher because they're in conditions that are not natural to them. And so, anyway, for all those reasons, we don't have marketing claims for organic or pasture. That we have our practices, and it doesn't make its way onto our packaging.
Thank you.
This is a culinary question.
Yeah.
I'm interested in lamb because when you go into, let's say, McCaffrey's or a very good supermarket, most of the lamb comes from New Zealand.
Uh-huh.
And the taste is very different from American lamb, because I know the difference. And to get an American leg of lamb is quite difficult. A leg of lamb that has a bone in it, that's grass-fed, and it's extremely expensive. Is it just because of the price? Well, first of all, the taste is different if you ever tasted two kinds of lambs.
Yeah.
It's very different. Is this because the price of American lamb is so expensive that supermarkets don't carry it? They just carry this New Zealand lamb all the time. I mean, you can get it, and it's expensive, but is there not a market for American lamb in this country?
Interestingly, there's not much of a market for American lamb, but just to the point of flavor, like, so one of the things I got crazy about in the beginning, or we spoke a lot about, is that and one of the reasons that I like being an animal farmer is there's so many variables. So it's not just the animal, it's what they eat, it's how they've been raised, it's how they've been treated, it's the breed. And so the American lamb, New Zealand lamb is still grass-fed, where most of the American lamb is not. And so that gives you, and the breed is different. So that's what gives you the flavor difference. But the reality is that we don't have a lot of demand for our lamb.
Yeah.
And we used to raise goats. Nobody would buy, it's one of my favorite meats, but nobody would buy it. So I think that's part of it. There's just not that Americans don't eat a lot of lamb. But I will say, so here's a bit of a marketing thing, that the breed that we have are Katahdins, and it's a very mild, so, it's not, some lamb is very strong. The Katahdin breed it's a very mild breed, so I think it's delicious.
And you don't get attached to him?
Oh, do you see one? Oh, yeah.
That was the first thing we ever got as a share. We got a full lamb from the woman who started the White Dog Cafe. Also had a farm, and she raised lamb. Remember, we got a full lamb from her. It was our first. I don't think she does it anymore, or hasn't in a while.
No, I think had a question always back.
How's the industry of small farms doing now in comparison to when it started in the region, New Jersey, Pennsylvania?
How are small farms
How
doing?
are small farms faring now?
I think hasn't gotten any easier. I think that COVID set us back a little bit. So I think that we had made good progress for people not to be ordering stuff online and to get out and know where their food comes from, and people were willing to pay a premium. Small farms are going to be a premium. It just takes more labor. It takes different infrastructure. And I don't know if it were that people got used to ordering stuff online when they were sitting at home, but it really set us back probably a decade in terms of how people buy off the farm.
And I think it was so many other things too. Employment it's so impossible to find people. We actually, we have 2 H2A workers. We go through that program, and it's arduous, it's expensive, but it is the only way we can get people to show up to work every single day. And we can only have them for 10 months before they go back to their home country, and then they come back. But it's employment that is a real struggle for us, and just getting things fixed. There's sort of this cottage industry of, not cottage industry, all the big guys do it. John Deere now has everything mechanized to the point where if you don't go to a John Deere dealer with your tractor, you can't get it fixed, but you can't get an appointment. It's like going to see the Princeton dermatology group, am I right? And then farmers really suffer. We're on a timeline every single part of every season. So there's that if you're a small farmer, you're not getting access. Slaughter, if you don't have on-farm slaughter like we do, you can't get an appointment at Bringhurst or Springfield Meats to get your animals slaughtered. So what was a 300-pound pig is now 500 pounds, and you can't sell those chops. They're just like dinosaur chops. So like farmers work on this timeline. Small farmer literally is just struggling for scraps when it comes to labor, repairs, everything, grants.
That's a rosy picture.
But so I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. You have to go to farmers markets as often as you can, buy from your local farmer as often as you can.
Yeah, but the labor problem is sort of throughout, certainly on the farms. That before COVID, our average employee was out maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks with sick or personal days. After COVID, even now, we have H-2A workers, so it's not as relevant to us, but the other farmers I talk to, the average employee is out 6 weeks. And so if you're a small farm with 5 or 6 employees, that means every day somebody is out and you're doing their job.
We have time for one more question.
I don't think it's important enough. Is anybody else? This is niche, and I a little bit apologize. In the beginning, you mentioned Hopewell Theater as part of your portfolio, and I noticed they're opening again. I'm just wondering if you're part of them still, if you're part of that Renaissance.
We're the building owner, and so we have 2 other partners in the building, and we didn't all agree, and so now one of the partners is out, and the partners that agree are in, and so the Hopewell Valley Arts Council is the tenant, and they have hired a theater manager who lives in Hopewell Borough that was a executive director of a nonprofit out in Chicago. She's doing a great job, and they're focused on getting it up and going, and that'll be their home base.
Thank you.
Wendell.
Last question. Just to add to that, Guns N' Hoses, that is a all-female Guns N' Roses cover band, is playing, I think, this next weekend, if anybody is interested.
Great name. I just had a question. What did your boys think, and how has this impacted your family? I would think it would be a great experience, but it also probably challenging too.
Yeah, so they've been involved from the beginning at various levels. So, working at the restaurant, working at the market, working on the farm. Our oldest son has moved away. I think he enjoyed it, and I think there were lessons that were learned.
Diesel equipment, yes. Cleaning stalls, no.
Yeah.
That's we could sum it up with that.
What a shock.
Yeah. And so interestingly, when you have a farm, you also have real estate, and so there's enough going on that's not technically farming that it has some interest to our younger son who's back and will probably be involved in one way, shape, or form. It may not actually be, raising the animals, but
We're trying not to push.
yeah.
But we need him to do it.
Well, we've run over our time, which is great, and that's terrific. Before we leave, the name of the farm is Double Brook Farm. The website is terrific. I spent a little time on that. And you're going to gain a tremendous amount of you'll gather a tremendous amount of information about the farm, about Robin and Jon, and it's good reading, and you'll also see the product. So go on the website, Double Brook Farm. I just want to thank you. I used the term earlier. You are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and the humanity of both you and how you deal with animals, you know, we pass farms all the time in the area, and we see these animals, we don't think twice about it. You do. And that's critically important, and we thank you for what you do and how you do it, and thank you all for spending, thank you both, Robin, for spending time with all of us today. I think everyone walks out of here a little bit smarter than when we walked in, and that's always a good sign. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.